My HOA president measured my rose bushes with a ruler and threatened to fine me for encroaching 3 inches onto common property. So I hired a surveyor and discovered his driveway was 2 feet onto my property. This is the story of how a property line survey cost him $15,000. For those of you lucky enough to have never experienced it, a homeowners association, or HOA, is a group of your neighbors who decide what you can and can't do with your own property. In theory, they exist to maintain property values. In practice, they're often run by petty tyrants. And the king of petty tyrants in my neighborhood was Richard, our HOA president. Richard lived next door to me and had been HOA president for 8 years, running unopposed because nobody else wanted the job. He took his role very seriously. He had a clipboard he carried around, making notes about violations. He had a tape measure to check if grass was over the 2.5-inch maximum height. He loved rules, and he especially loved enforcing them. In the 3 years I had lived there, I'd received violation notices for everything, leaving my garbage can out for 6 hours instead of 4, having a garden gnome that was not in keeping with the neighborhood aesthetic, and even having a doormat that was the wrong shade of brown. I'm not making this up. I mostly just paid the fines and moved on. It wasn't worth fighting with Richard. The guy had way too much time on his hands and clearly enjoyed the power trip. But then he went after my roses. I love gardening, and I'm particularly proud of my prize-winning rose bushes. One Saturday morning, I was out front watering them when Richard came over with his clipboard and tape measure. "We have a problem," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. He knelt down and started measuring. "Your roses are encroaching on HOA common property. According to my measurements, they're extending 3 inches past your property line." I stared at him. 3 inches? 3 inches, Richard confirmed. "That's a violation of HOA regulations, section 4.7. You have 30 days to remove the encroaching portions, or you'll be fined $100 per day until the violation is corrected." You want me to cut back my prize-winning roses because they're 3 inches over an invisible line? The line isn't invisible, Richard said. It's clearly marked in the neighborhood plat. Rules are rules. He handed me a formal violation notice and walked away. I stood there, absolutely furious. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Richard and his clipboard and his smug face, and I started wondering, if he was so concerned about property lines, were all of his structures within his property boundaries? The next morning, I called a professional surveyor. "I need a complete property survey," I told him. "I need to know exactly where my property lines are, down to the inch." The surveyor came out the following week. It cost me $500, but I didn't care. He spent about 4 hours measuring, and when he was done, he called me over. "Okay," he said, pointing to a series of stakes he'd placed in the ground. "These mark your actual property boundaries." I looked at the stakes, then at my rose bushes. They were a good 6 inches inside my property line. "Wait," I said. "My roses aren't on common property at all?" "Nope," the surveyor said. "Whoever told you they were encroaching was wrong." I felt a surge of vindication. But then I noticed something else. One of the surveyor's stakes was placed right in the middle of Richard's driveway. "Hold on," I said. "Why is there a stake in his driveway?" The surveyor checked his notes. "Because that's your property line. His driveway extends about 2 feet onto your property." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah," the surveyor said. Looks like when he poured his driveway, he went over the property line, his driveway, and he walked around to Richard's backyard. His shed and part of his deck are also on your property. I couldn't believe it. Richard, the guy who measured everyone's grass, had built structures on my property. How much of his stuff is on my land? I asked. The surveyor did some quick calculations. The driveway encroaches about 2 feet, which is roughly 80 square feet. The shed is entirely on your property. That's another 100 square feet. And about a quarter of his deck is over the line, maybe 50 square feet. Total, you're looking at about 230 square feet of encroachment. I asked the surveyor to document everything in a formal report. When I got it, I sat down and did some research on property law. I learned that property owners have the right to demand removal of encroaching structures, and if the encroacher refuses, you can sue for damages and force removal. I had options. I drafted a formal letter citing the survey results and state property law, and sent it to Richard via certified mail. The letter said, "Dear Richard, a recent property survey has revealed that your driveway, shed, and deck encroach on my property by approximately 230 square feet. Under state law, I am entitled to exclusive use of my property. I hereby demand that you remove all encroaching structures within 30 days. If you fail to comply, I will file a lawsuit for trespass and seek an injunction requiring removal at your expense." I included a copy of the survey report with photos and measurements. 2 days later, Richard showed up at my door, his face red and looking like he was about to explode. "This is ridiculous," he said, waving my letter. "My driveway has been there for 8 years. You can't just demand I tear it up." "Actually, I can," I said calmly. "It's on my property. The survey proves it." "This is harassment," Richard said. "No," I said. "Harassment is threatening to fine me $100 a day because my roses extended 3 inches past where you thought the property line was. Which, by the way, they don't. The survey shows my roses are entirely on my property. You were wrong." Richard's face got even redder. "We can work this out. I'll drop the violation notice about your roses." "That's not enough," I said. "You've been harassing me and everyone else in this neighborhood for years. You measure our grass, you fine us for doormats, you threaten us over garden gnomes. And the whole time, you've had illegal structures on my property." "What do you want?" Richard asked. "I want it in writing, signed by you and the entire HOA board, that I will receive no violation notices for any reason for the next 5 years. I want complete immunity from your petty enforcement." "That's insane," Richard said. "Then I'll see you in court," I said. "And when the judge orders you to remove your driveway, your shed, and your deck, you can explain to your wife why you have to spend $15,000 to fix your mistake." Richard stared at me. I could see him doing the math. Tearing up a driveway, removing a shed, rebuilding a deck, it would cost a fortune. "Fine," he said finally. 5 years, no violations. "In writing," I said. "Signed by the whole board." 1 week later, I received a formal letter from the HOA board, signed by all 5 members, stating that my property was exempt from violation notices for a period of 5 years. I framed it and hung it in my garage. Richard removed his shed 2 months later. He had to hire a contractor to cut back his deck, and he repoured the edge of his driveway so it stayed on his property. I heard from a neighbor that it cost him over $15,000 total. And the best part? Richard resigned as HOA president shortly after. He claimed it was because he was too busy with work, but everyone knew the real reason. He'd been humiliated. The guy who spent 8 years measuring everyone else's property had been caught with illegal structures on someone else's land. The new HOA president is much more reasonable. As for my roses, they're still there, beautiful as ever, sitting comfortably within my property boundaries. And every time I water them, I think about Richard and his tape measure and his clipboard. And I smile. The moral of the story: if you're going to be a petty tyrant about rules, make sure you're following them yourself. Because the moment you slip up, someone's going to be there with a surveyor and a lawyer, ready to return the favor. And it's going to cost you a lot more than 3 inches of roses. Like and amp, follow Payback Chronicles Ek for more.